I have been getting the same question over and over again from real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, passive investors, CEOs of real estate companies. And that question is, given the amount of uncertainty in the marketplace right now because of COVID, should we be doing deals? Are there any deals that make sense right now? And so to answer that question, we created a webinar with 3 panelists that are elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs to ask them that exact question. We've got a senior living consultant, which is obviously interesting given the amount of attention to that space. Jillian Hellman, who is the CEO of Realty Mogul, one of the most premier crowdfunding portals in the United States. And Josh Satin, who is the director of acquisitions over at Gelt, has about $1 billion under management. So these 3 people answer that question. And then, of course, we get into the details. So you can get access to that free webinar at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing-deals. And I'll see you on the inside. Look, we all know that real estate has created more millionaires than pretty much any other business. The problem is, it's also created a lot of heartaches and bankruptcies. Sure, we can get access to a ton of real estate education on the internet, but that's precisely the problem. How can we tell which strategies will consistently produce asymmetric returns and which should be avoided at all costs? My goal is to give real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, and investors all of the secrets so that we can grow our portfolios without dealing with costly investment nightmares. And that's what this program is all about. I'm Hunter Thompson, and welcome to the Cashflow Connections Real Estate Podcast. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the Monday Minutes on the Cashflow Connections Real Estate Podcast. I am traveling right now, so I don't have my high-quality microphone, but don't worry, I will be back to LA soon. But in the meantime, just know I am very much excited about an upcoming project I'm working on that nobody knows about. I have not launched it yet. No one knows, but trust me, if you're interested in the topic of raising capital, there's something very cool. Probably one of the coolest things I've ever put together. We're about to announce it. And by the way, you're only going to get word of it if you are subscribed on the Cashflow Connections Real Estate Podcast subscription email list. So go to cashflowconnections.com, subscribe to the show. You'll get an email every time we launch an episode, and you'll be the first to know when we do launch this new cool project that, again, is something that I'm very, very proud of. So today I want to talk to you about the most meaningful, most impactful, most significant, most memorable $260,000 wire I've ever received. And it is a tie-in to the story I told in Raising Capital for Real Estate, which if you've read the book, you already know, but I'll tell it again briefly here because it's an interesting story. So back when I got started in real estate, started with my own capital, then helped my mom invest and my sisters invest. And this was all passive investing, and found a niche in the recession-resistant space early on, thanks to a lot of people that I got connected with, and developed a track record, developed some amazing strategic partners, and really saw an interesting opportunity in the mobile home park business for all the reasons that now people know, but back then wasn't nearly as common or talked about, even within the real estate sector. So found this niche, developed a track record, and I thought, okay, there's got to be a way to scale this business, to make this a lucrative, profitable business. And I came up with, to some degree, the fund of funds model. This isn't a new concept, but I wasn't really told about it. I just kind of had to infer it. It just wasn't really that common yet. So I created an entity and was going to pool investors together and then invest into a mobile home park fund. And because I was investing significantly, I anticipated investing a minimum of $500,000. I went to the operating partner and said, hey, I know you guys have access to a lot of money. You're raising tens of millions of dollars, but your normal investors are investing $50,000 or $100,000. If I invest $500,000, can I get preferential treatment to this investing entity? So as an example, instead of an 8% preferred return, what about a 10% preferred return? And they agreed and said, okay, great. Well, now only thing now is I got to find the investors, right? So I sent out some emails to my friends and family and their plus ones, plus twos, anyone that I thought would be interested in investing passively in real estate. So uncles, distant relatives, just wealthy people that I knew that were successful. And I drove traffic to an Eventbrite.com actually. And basically that Eventbrite invitation was for a lunch at my house in Memphis. And that lunch was basically an opportunity for me to present in the mobile home park sector, talk about my track record, talk about the strategic partners track record, which they're one of the largest operators in the US with an excellent track record, by the way. And I gave a presentation that was totally something I'd be comfortable doing today. I was very nervous, obviously, but I'd practice and practice and practice, got in front of 30 people, all accredited investors. So a minimum net worth of about $30 million was in the room, and gave this presentation. And at the end of the presentation, put down empty pieces of paper in front of each potential investor and said, hey, write the dollar amount that you're interested in investing, and then fold the paper, turn it into me so that you can keep it private. And then at the end, I'll count up the dollars. And by the way, before I even gave the presentation, I texted what is now my wife, Chrissy, and was just so excited. I was like, I'm confident I'm going to be able to raise $500,000, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 1 or 2 million. And so that was where the expectation was internally. And obviously with this woman that I would later marry, meaning I was chasing her around endlessly at the time. But after the presentation, I got the papers, counted it all up, and had a ground total of $0 invested. And this was devastating, as many of you know. I mean, it almost ended my career. I had to take a couple months and rethink what I was doing with my life, because it wasn't really the financial implications. It wasn't really the fact that I had set myself up and had failed. It was just embarrassing, to Chrissy and to the people that were there. I just really did not sit well with me that I couldn't have done worse than raise $0. And there was so much money in that room. So there was a lot of learnings from that. I won't go into that now. If you're interested in getting all the learnings, you can go to raisingcapitalforrealestate.com. But why this recent wire was so interesting is that when we put out this ATM deal, more than 8 years later, someone who was at that lunch sent a wire for $260,000. And it was really crazy. I didn't think about it at the time, but when we started doing due diligence calls about the ATM deal, the first call, they said, hey, Hunter, I read your book. And it was crazy because I realized I was at that meeting. And then after a couple of due diligence calls, after a couple webinars and podcasts that were given out, not just to that person, but to everybody that was interested in investing in the deal, they ended up moving forward. And so about a week ago, I received this $260,000 wire from someone who was at my first, most epic failure of my career, which I thought was going to be the launching point of my career. And so it just goes to show you, I really needed $500,000 back then and couldn't rub together 2 nickels from investor capital. And today, we've got several, 260, 312. It's weird because the investment only accepts increments of 52,000. So weird numbers, but we received a $600,000+ wire from an individual that I had not spoken to directly. Now, it's not because they're idiots. It's because we put out so much educational, informational content about this deal, but also in general, that they felt comfortable moving forward. But especially this $260,000 investor, who, by the way, is a very savvy individual and has made many active and passive investments in real estate. So, like I said, it just goes to show you this system works. It just doesn't work fast. And if you haven't yet had one of those massive kick in the gut type of failures, they're coming. And if you've been through one, you know what I'm talking about. And if you're going through one right now, sometimes it can feel like it's never going to end. And how are you going to overcome it? And oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. You just texted the girl that you would later marry, hey, I can't wait to tell you how great of a job I did so that you can think I'm successful. Sometimes it can feel like, wow, maybe I should go be a dentist. Maybe this isn't for me. Maybe the swings of entrepreneurship or the swings of investing or handling money in general is just not for me. But if you put in the work and if you dedicate yourself and if you build relationships, if you join mentorship programs and masterminds and surround yourself with people that are above your level constantly, you will see similar results. I have many weaknesses, just a few strengths. And I have identified those strengths and focused on them over the last 8 to 10 years. And now things just roll smoothly. I didn't need that $260,000 wire. We're doing quite well on that raise. I would very much like it because I want to help people. And of course, it's good for me. Of course, it's good for business. But it meant so much to see the difference between what it was like at that time when if I got a tenth of that, the minimum investment, by the way, back then was $25,000. If I had gotten $26,000, which is a tenth of 260, it would have made my life. And because of the work, because of the grind, because of the commitment, doing things like putting out content frequently and consistently and trying to make that content quality, that's just one arm of the business and one reason that the change has been made. But hey, listen, you can do it too. You really can. Even if real estate's not your thing or you listen to the show as a passive investor, think about how far you've come over the last 6-10 years and the things you put in place to ensure that would happen, and just keep going. So hopefully that helps. I have been getting the same question over and over again from real estate entrepreneurs, capital raisers, passive investors, CEOs of real estate companies. And that question is, given the amount of uncertainty in the marketplace right now because of COVID, should we be doing deals? Are there any deals that make sense right now? And so to answer that question, we created a webinar with 3 panelists that are elite, savvy, sophisticated real estate entrepreneurs to ask them that exact question. We've got a senior living consultant, which is obviously interesting given the amount of attention to that space. Jillian Hellman, who is the CEO of Realty Mogul, one of the most premier crowdfunding portals in the United States. And Josh Satin, who is the director of acquisitions over at Gelt, has about $1 billion under management. So these 3 people answer that question. And then, of course, we get into the details. So you can get access to that free webinar at cfcmentorshipprogram.com/doing deals. And I'll see you on the inside.